they were really unknown in the United States. They were popular here and popular in Jamaica, but the United States really knew nothing about reggae. And so Jeffrey had a big challenge to introduce it to the American public. So Bob came up to Los Angeles in 1975, and Jeffrey arranged for all the press interviews. And you'll see several pictures from the press interviews here. And Bob performed at the Roxy, and Jeffrey introduced him to George Harrison, which was a huge thrill for both of them. And when Bob heard that George was coming backstage, he said, "Raspito!" And it was kind of agonizing for me because they met in a very dark hallway, and I was using some batteries in my flash that were dying, so it took 30 seconds between charges. And when you only have a 2-minute meeting, you have to wait 30 seconds to be able to take the picture. It is absolutely agonizing, but it was still a very exciting moment. And then, let's see, we don't have to do 75. He performed on a television show called Manhattan Transfer, which was a summer replacement variety series. And so Bob performed on that. And then Jeffrey arranged for a lot of the music press to come talk to Bob. He couldn't get any radio airplay. Nobody would play reggae. They kept saying things like, "You can't dance to it," which absolutely baffles me. I don't know how you could not dance to reggae. And so then we went down to Jamaica later that year, and Jeffrey showed all of the press that we had gotten when Bob came up. And Bob basically just allowed me to hang out at the house and document everything that was going on. And he trusted me and he trusted Jeffrey because he knew that we were trying to spread the message of his music and love and peace and brotherhood and equality and justice, and that we were working for him to spread that word. So he completely trusted us and was completely cooperative. And it was a real pleasure to work with him. He was so charismatic and so conscientious about the music. He took it very, very seriously. And then the next year, Bob came back up to Los Angeles. You'll see in the book, it takes place over 4 periods. So it goes Los Angeles, Jamaica, Los Angeles, Jamaica. So when he came back to Los Angeles the next year, we shot the cover of High Times magazine, which you see on the wall over there. And that was one of the few times that Bob really enjoyed posing, because he was not a poser. He was not a posing kind of guy. But for the cover of High Times magazine, he was really pleased to do it. And during that same session, we had our 2.5-year-old with us. And that picture is on the wall there. He's wearing a yellow cap. And my son considered himself a Rasta, and he knew every cut on every reggae album that had ever been released in the United States. And you can see Bob really enjoyed his presence. My son has that on his wall at home in Los Angeles. And then he performed in Santa Barbara, which was an open-air amphitheater during the day. And normally Bob performed in clubs that were at night pretty dark, so it was hard to see the full range of the way he moved. So photographing him in Santa Barbara was lovely because you could really see the way he danced. And kind of thinking we should do a little flip book so you can see the full range of the way he danced. And then the next year, and later that year, we went back down to Jamaica. Only this time, we brought our son Orion with us, and we also brought a young rock journalist who had worked for us in Music World magazine when we first met, Cameron Crowe. And you've seen Almost Famous. It was during his Almost Famous period that he worked with us. And he was 18 when he took me to Jamaica. And so when I decided to put this book together, I contacted Cameron. I said, I don't know how much you remember from that trip, but would you consider giving me a few captions for some of the photos? And instead, he wrote this beautiful introduction to the book that described what it was like to travel around Jamaica with us. And I was very touched by what he wrote. So when we went down in 1976, we brought a lot of journalists with us, a lot of music journalists, because we wanted them to see where Bob came from and get the Italo vibes, to really understand what generated the music. And we also spent time with Peter Tosh and Buddy Whaler, and I traveled all over the island. I photographed all the different musicians we came in contact with. It didn't matter if they were recording for items or not. All the musicians we met, I was happy to photograph them. And a lot of people have asked me why the pictures have the sense of intimacy that they do. And I consider myself the opposite of a paparazzi, because paparazzi take people's pictures against their will. And what I do, I consider a mutual act of love between me and my subjects. And if I don't have their trust and their consent, I won't photograph them. And so all of the pictures you see are the result of kind of a mutual love affair between me and the subjects. And so I hope you enjoy the show. One thing that I want to mention is that Bob Marley's family has started a foundation that's called OneLove.org. That's the number one, not spelled out. OneLove.org. And if you look it up on the computer, they want people to sign on to the website and to let them know every time they do an act of loving kindness. Because they figure they can generate millions of acts of loving kindness in the world, that they will change the world for better. And they are partnered with a lot of major charities, like Charity Water to provide clean drinking water around the world, and the United Nations Environmental Fund, and organizations that help educate children and that work for world peace. So I encourage you all, when you get home, look for OneLove.org, sign on to the site, and every time you do an act of loving kindness, let them know, because they would like to generate millions of acts like that in Bob's name. So thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the photos. Come see me. I'll gladly sign things for you. And thank you for coming. And what I'd love to do is I'd love to take a picture of the crowd. So I may have to